Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX World. I'm Megha Sharma and this is the World Report. Let's take a look at the headlines. US President Donald Trump calls Saudi Arabia America's strongest partner and unveils a $142 billion arms deal in Riyadh. He also promises to end all sanctions on Syria, urging a new path towards greatness for the war-torn nation. A major trade deal between Washington and Beijing takes effect, cutting most tariffs and halting a damaging trade war. Agreement reached in Geneva talks offers temporary relief to global markets and supply chains. Ukrainian President Zelensky says he's only attend the Ukraine-Russia talks if Putin shows up in person. He challenges Kremlin, saying Putin too is too scared for a face-to-face interaction in Istanbul. In a rare meeting, President Trump of America urges Syria's Ahmed al-Shara to join the Abraham Accords, deport Palestinian terrorists and take over ISIS prison control. The White House calls it a landmark dialogue, the first US-Syria talks in 25 years. At least 70 Palestinians, including women and children, die in intensified Israeli airstrikes on Jabalia as Trump tours the region. Israeli officials confirm a Hamas military leader was killed. Aid agencies warn of famine as Gaza supplies are cut. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says Trump's remarks on Iran's regional role reflect a very deceptive view. He rejects US President's criticism of Iranian leadership, calling it misleading and unfair. Libya's worst fighting in years eases after a government ceasefire takes hold, following days of deadly militia clashes across Tripoli. There has been no official death toll, but residents report intense battles across the capital since Monday night. China and Colombia sign a landmark deal bringing Bogota into Xi Jinping's Belt and Road Initiative. Chinese President Xi calls for a quality upgrade in ties after meeting Colombian leader Gustavo Petro in Beijing. China's expansionism knows no bound. Now on 11th May up till 12th of May, China launched a new campaign to provoke India. It renamed parts of Arunachal Pradesh, a state in India, and China has targeted 27 places in the state by assigning new names, Chinese names, to these places. Following this, India has once again issued a firm rebuttal to China's claims. In a sharply worded statement, India's Ministry of External Affairs has described China's move as vain and preposterous. The ministry emphasized that inventing names cannot change the ground reality that Arunachal Pradesh has always been and will continue to be an integral and inalienable part of the country. This is not the first time Beijing has attempted to alter facts on the ground. In April 2024, China released a fourth list of renamed locations along the line of actual control in Arunachal Pradesh. Earlier, there were attempts that were made in 2017, 2021 and 2023, all of which India had categorically rejected. India maintains that these attempts will not change the status of Arunachal Pradesh as being an indisputable part of the country. I have with me Ambassador Suresh Goyal. Thank you very much, sir. My first question, of course, about the timing of China once again trying to claim parts of Arunachal Pradesh that are inalienable to India. What do you make of it? This comes right after the ceasefire has been declared between India and Pakistan.
Megha, one or two things. First of all, China has never given up a claim on parts of the territories of what we know as Arunachal Pradesh. It has been there all the time. They have never rescinded the claim, and uh, therefore, renaming the place's name is not tantamount to renewing a claim on the territory, which has always been there. Uh, it is a it's a situation which we are all aware of in India, and we know that essentially the conversation with the Chinese have been on this subject also. Whenever we talked about the boundary dispute and whenever we talked about really working out the settlement. The difference really is that while the line in Ladakh area has been subject to uh, crossings of the soldiers. There have been skirmishes. There have been military action in Galwan, etc. In the case of Arunachal Pradesh, even after 1962, when China vacated the area in what was then called NEFA, Northeast Frontier Agency, the border was never activated. The line of control was never activated. China, that was actually the McMahon line in that area, which was the matter of dispute which China never agreed to. And now, after 62, they restored, or we restored our presence till the line, which was actually we were patrolling even earlier, which we claimed till even 62. Chinese had withdrawn, but they never gave up the claim on that area, and therefore, from time to time, there have been pinpricks, like renaming the areas, like not respecting the passports issued by the government of India for the people from Arunachal Pradesh. It has happened, in fact, in one of the games being hosted in, I forget which year, there were 3 archers from Arunachal Pradesh who were supposed to go, and they couldn't go because we didn't agree to issuing the visas on a separate paper, while they wanted the visas to be endorsed not on the passport but on a separate paper. Those disputes came up again and again. It has always been there. Megha, coming from that, the point really here is renaming the place name means nothing. And that is what our official spokesman also said. It is tantamount to nothing. They call not New Delhi, they call it Sin Delhi. Gulf of Mexico, if the USA also call it Gulf of USA. It doesn't change the reality. Therefore, we should go into not the name of the name changing, but we have to go into whether China will be able to renew its claim on the territory again and not. And that is a serious problem. The way the situation is now developing, China can renew its claim, which it has not really done for a long time, particularly because of a linkage to Buddhism. But that's a long story. Tawang is the area where the Dalai Lama came from. And that is a long story, and there's a whole history behind it. So we need to be cautious about China renewing the claim on the area, which could lead to even more difficulties. Megha.
Right, absolutely. But then the fact that there have been multiple attempts that have been made by China, and this is simply to irk India. On one hand, there have been Corps Commander level talks, there have been Foreign Secretary level talks that have taken place between India and China to find some sort of a middle ground when it comes to the aggression that has been shown by China along the line of actual control. The problem in Arunachal Pradesh continues to persist. It almost looks like China is poking India. And why is it doing so?
Megha, first of all, the talks that you refer to are not in respect of our eastern borders. They are not in respect of Arunachal Pradesh so far. They have been in respect of Ladakh, they have been in respect of our northern borders, northern areas. Those talks have taken place foreign secretary level. The talks have taken place even Wang Yi and our Minister Jaishankar. The talks have taken place at the Corps Commander level, at all levels. Those are different. So let us not actually mix up the talks in the case of Galwan and Ladakh with the area to our northeast. Those are completely different. As far as poking India is concerned, why do we get poked? China has made certain changes on their own map. Welcome, do whatever you want. It doesn't, and that is what our official spokesman is saying. it does not change the ground reality. Those areas remain in our possession. They are part of India, and we continue to govern those territories. Administratively, they are under our control.
Okay.
So let us leave it there. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ambassador Goel, for joining me, sharing your views. Moving on, in a major policy shift, US President Donald Trump has announced the lifting of all sanctions on Syria. The president also confirmed that Washington is now exploring the possibility of normalizing ties with Damascus. The announcement came during a summit between the United States and Gulf Arab states held in Saudi Arabia. Ahead of the summit, US President met with the Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara, marking the first formal contact since Shara took power following the ouster of Bashar al-Assad in December. This is an important moment as for the first time in 25 years, a sitting US president is meeting his Syrian counterpart. It signals a dramatic departure from decades of diplomatic isolation, with Washington now exploring formal ties with Damascus. Saudi Arabia and Turkey have both expressed support for the move. Trump described the decision as giving Syria a chance at quote-unquote greatness and framed it as a step towards boosting humanitarian aid, trade and investment. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio is expected to meet his Syrian counterpart later this week, continuing the diplomatic outreach. The announcement was welcomed by the Syrian and the Lebanese leaders and cautiously supported by members of both US political parties. The United Nations also praised the development, calling it a step towards Syria's long-term recovery. In related news, the US president has reaffirmed America's commitment and partnership with the Gulf leaders as he joined the summit between the United States and the Gulf Cooperation Council. The US president has exchanged farewells with Saudi officials and at present is holding talks with the Emir of Qatar in Doha. Listen in to what the US president had to say on the Syrian sanctions.
They're great leaders, you are. We are currently exploring normalizing relations with Syria's new government, as you know, beginning with my meeting with President Ahmed al-Shara and Secretary Rubio's meeting with the Syrian foreign minister in Turkey after discussing the situation with Crown Prince Mohammed and President Erdogan of Turkey. I am also ordering the cessation of sanctions against Syria to give them a fresh start. It gives them a chance for greatness. The sanctions were really crippling, very powerful.
Dr. Wael Awad on the telecast with me. Dr. Awad, how do you react to the news of the lifting of sanctions on Syria and a historic meeting between the US president and his Syrian counterpart?
Thank you, Megha. I think this is one of the major steps that the United States have taken over the 15 years of sanctions on Syrian government, the previous government, that have really, made everybody in Syria suffer because of the economic harsh that has implemented. Similarly, it was the American who applied on the Iraqi regime of Saddam Hussein, and after years of sanctions, they have removed Saddam Hussein. And that is the same fashion. President Assad was removed, and then al-Shara was appointed as an interim president. And I think the jubilation in the street of Syria was very high last night, and in celebration for the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia and the American president for lifting those sanctions. I think there is still lots of hurdle ahead, Megha, because the Americans have implemented or imposed numbers of sanctions, including Caesar sanctions in 2019, which is very difficult at the moment to remove it. But President Trump will remove those who has been implemented by the previous president, and maybe this one will require the Congress, to 2/3 of the Congress majority, to remove the sanctions on Syria. However, this have also brought jubilation. So let's see that if what are to be paid by Syria to the American government and the Israelis, because all these years that Syria has been steadfast against Israeli expansion in the region. And Israel was not happy with the Syrian government, so they wanted to change. And now this government is more friendly with Israel and the United States, Turkey, and the Arab countries. So they may be thinking of normalization of relation with Syria. And of course, there are lots of conditions for the government of Syria to pay. For the moment, the interim president Ahmad al-Shara, will be speaking to the people of Syria tonight. And let's hope, if there is any hope he carries in his voice to the future of Syria, stability, integrity, and not giving divided Syria into part which is annexed by the United States in the northern eastern part, or Turkey can fix the northern part of Syria and the northern western part of Syria. And Israel also have taken 3 provinces almost of Syria. So we have to watch and see what could be the fallout in Syria.
Now, there have been some serious conditions that have been placed by the US president. Signing of the Abraham Accords for normalization of ties with Israel, deporting of Palestinians as quote-unquote terrorists is what he has described it as. How do you view these demands that have been made in terms of America lifting sanctions on Syria?
Well, that's what I was saying. There is nobody give you a free lunch. So the Americans definitely have a long list of what to do and don't. So including that there will be no arming of the Syrian army, there will be no military bases for any country. I think the main focus for the Israelis and the Americans is to keep away the Turkish from too much influence in the Syrian affair. And that is the message that the Israelis have given to the Julani and even to the American administration. And that's what the Saudi are trying to take a lead now in the Islamic world. And they wanted to ensure that there is no citizenship is given to all the mercenaries came with Julani to fight alongside with him. We have around 65 to 70,000 of them. So they are Shishan, Uyghur, Turk, Mughal, Moroccan, Tajik, name it, and 83 nationalities are with him. So the main cause for the concern of the Arab and the Syrian is the changing the Syrian citizenship by giving these people a citizenship of Syria. So I think this is one of the conditions. And when Turkey spoke on terms of having military bases and more influence in the Syrian affairs, as Israel stepped in. So the fight now it's between Turkey and Israel and not between Iran and Israel has been in the past.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Dr. Vailavat, for joining me and sharing your views. Meanwhile, tensions are high ahead of a possible direct peace talks between Russia and Ukraine set for Thursday in Istanbul. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he'll only attend if Russian President Vladimir Putin is present. He is refusing to meet with any other Russian official. The talks come amidst growing pressure from the Americans and Europe, who have warned Moscow to agree to a 30-day ceasefire or face tough sanctions. Zelensky is due to meet the Turkish President Erdogan in Ankara, but says he will head to Istanbul immediately if Putin confirms his presence. The US President Donald Trump has backed the talks and says he might fly to Turkey depending on whether Putin participates. The Secretary of State of America, Marco Rubio, and other senior officials will represent the US at the table. The last direct meeting between Putin and Zelensky took place in 2022, shortly after Russia's full-scale invasion. That round of talks, held in Belarus, failed to reach a breakthrough. This Istanbul summit would mark the first face-to-face engagement between the two leaders in over 3 years. Ross Feingold on the telecast with me. Ross, interesting times here. There has been an ultimatum that has been given by Zelensky of Ukraine to have face-to-face talks with Putin. But what are the chances this on-the-table conversation will take place between the Russian president and his Ukrainian counterpart tomorrow?
At the time of this program, we still don't know. Russia and President Putin have simply not indicated whether or not President Putin is going to fly to Istanbul and meet with Zelensky in person. So time is running out. We'll know the answer by within a few hours from now. And in the meantime, the key stakeholders are awaiting that decision from Putin. Those stakeholders, most importantly, being President Zelensky, but also the hosts, the government and president of Turkey, as well as the United States government, including President Trump, who said that he's willing to fly to Istanbul and participate directly in the talks. I think President Trump deserves some credit for willing to put his own political capital on the line by offering to be in the room with the two leaders, the leaders of Ukraine and Russia. But in the meantime, we simply don't know whether or not Putin is going to go.
Okay, but then do you think these demands of having Putin in the discussion table are unwarranted? how does it make a difference whether President Putin or his delegation that is led by the Foreign Minister Lavrov is present to hold talks for a possible 30-day ceasefire?
That's a really interesting question, and there isn't necessarily a right or wrong answer to that question. From one perspective, just based on simple protocol concerns, if the president of Ukraine is going to be in the room, then the president of the other side, in this case Putin, should be in the room. It would be a little odd for the president of Ukraine to meet and negotiate with people below the presidential level who are simply ministers of the Russian government. One would say that's really inappropriate for a president to try and negotiate with people who are below his level on the Russian side. So one could understand Zelensky's concern that he wants to be negotiating with his counterpart and maintain the dignity of the fact that he's president and really should only be interacting with the president of Russia. So I think we should be very sympathetic to Zelensky's concern in that regard. The other perspective on that is to simply say that Zelensky showed up, the other president didn't show up, Putin did not show up, and this makes Zelensky look good, and it makes Russia look like the uncooperative party, and there could be more sanctions. The EU today discussed imposing additional sanctions on Russia's shadow fleet. President Trump has threatened to impose more sanctions on Russia if Putin doesn't show up. So again, another perspective on this it would be to recommend to Zelensky, you got to go, you got to be in the room, and let Putin embarrass himself by not showing up.
All right. And finally, before I let you go, what are but the fresh threats by Europe, whether it is the German Chancellor or the French President, of imposing new sanctions on Russia if a 30-day ceasefire was not achieved?
For Western Europe, what we still see, despite changes in leadership in some of the countries in recent years, we have a relatively new prime minister in the UK, Starmer. We have a new chancellor in Germany. And they still remain united. And they've been united in their support of Ukraine. They've been united in providing weapons and cash to Ukraine. Of course, a lot of that was with the cooperation of the former Biden administration in the US. And they're cooperating on sanctions as well. So to its credit, Western Europe remains united, and I think this is it's a substantial tool. Russia will genuinely be concerned about additional sanctions from the Western European countries and possibly from the United States. So it might be effective in the coming hours in getting Putin to show up.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Ross, for giving us your point of view. On that note, I'm out of time. I thank you all for watching us on NewsX World. Stay tuned for more news and updates.